Thank you
That's why I'm
so
saying
much.
Take your time. Although it was fun. There's somebody.
I get the proclamation, but. Right. Yeah. Oh. Oh, we're good. So we'll call the Wood Village City Council meeting to order July 11th, 2023. And do I have a counselor that would like to read our land acknowledgement statement? And you're going to have to listen to me read a proclamation in a short time. So
I'd be happy to, Mayor. Once
Okay.
we get to it. Okay.
thank you, Counselor.
The Chinookian people known as the Clackamas and Cascade. Now, I'm sorry if I don't have it close enough. Of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of the Nechok was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resources gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the Cedar and Huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systematic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous and Native Americans families today. We are honored to be honored by the collective works of the many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands.
Thank you, Counselor Clark. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And under our citizens' comments, I have the privilege of reading a proclamation for the designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Before I do that, I want to recognize Mike Abadi in the audience. Mike is not only here tonight for this proclamation, but Mike is also the board chair of Play East for some that don't know that. Mike is also has had a long career in parks and recreation as director, designing parks. So he's had a long career and a commitment and a passion for parks and recreation. So Mike, it's nice to have you here tonight. And with that, I will read the proclamation. I'll go with my little. Okay. Okay, thanks. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Fairview, Wood Village, and East Multnomah County. And whereas recreation programs are offered throughout our communities by Play East. And whereas Play East is funded by the residents of Fairview and Wood Village with donations from private companies, individuals, and public agencies such as Metro and Multnomah County. And whereas Play East, relies on the collaboration of the Reynolds School District, Wood Village Baptist Church, and the park departments of Wood Village and Fairview in providing facilities for its programs. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And Whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts the mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation is the leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition, and education, whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education, such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to the childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation expands our community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, and attraction and retention of businesses and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environment well-being of our community, and whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the cities of Fairview and Wood Village recognize the more than 4,200 young people who have benefited by the programs offered by Play East, now therefore be it resolved by the Fairview City Council, the Wood Village City Council, and the Board of Play East that July is recognized as the Park and Recreation Month in our communities. Proclaimed and signed and sealed this 11th day of July, 2023 in the city of Wood Village. Mike, thank you. Thank you, Mike. And if you have any brief comments you'd like to make, but we appreciate and are proud to be a part of proclaiming this month as Park and Recreation Month. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Our public safety report.
We still have public comments to make too.
We still, oh, excuse me. Do we have? Yes.
Yes, we
I
do.
believe we do have some public comments.
Yes, we do. The first one was an email conversation with Lori Meshik from 238th Place in Wood Village. Took place around the 4th of July holiday, around fireworks, and wondering what could be done around a fireworks ban. Portland implemented a ban last year, I believe, both on the use and sale of fireworks. I believe this year they had more fires related to fireworks this year than last year. While Vancouver banned the use of fireworks, they didn't ban the sale of it. And so my response is back to her, where until there's a larger regional effort around the use and sale, the access is still plentiful, which then can set up a false expectation that if they are banned and people start using them, why isn't there more enforcement? Which enforcement on the 4th of July holiday and the surrounding days is very difficult. Fairview did implement banning provisions, but that was around like severe weather, heat and dry, that kind of thing, which is something could be done. And I think we experienced that a few years back with the heat wave. And actually the mayor and I met with Senator Gorsuch's staffer and we asked about if there's any statewide appetite or initiative. Not really. So those were her comments. She kind of wanted to just bring that out to your attention and just kind of relayed the conversation to you all as we had it.
Thank you, Greg.
And there's one more. New one.
Well, thank you for the first one.
Yeah. This was a phone call, just concerns around unmuffled exhaust braking on 238th Hill. Early morning hours, we did relay to the individual that Multnomah County did do a noise study prior to the work on the hill, but we don't have a copy of that. So we kind of referred her to Multnomah County Transportation to look into that. It's also very difficult with listening for unmuffled anything, whether it's a sports car, a semi truck, unless it's a regular occurrence, like, between 5:30 and 5:45, it's the same truck. It's hard to get our public safety partners. It can't just sit there for 3 hours waiting what may occur. We also understand the disruption that can be probably on a regularly occurring basis.
Okay.
I
Well, thanks.
hear them quite often at my
That you
house.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say, they're not Jake brakes, or are they?
They are.
Yeah, they are. But
And I thought those.
whether some are muffled or unmuffled and what people consider a muffled device or not is also can be disputed.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I do appreciate you taking those calls and responding to our citizens. Thank you. Public safety report now. Chief, welcome.
All right, good evening, everyone. The safety report is delivered to city manager. Probably it was distributed to you. As you saw in the last 30 days, we had 132 dispatched calls for service with 124 self-initiated, average response time of 3 minutes and 39 seconds for emergencies. There was 3 hit and runs this month. All 3 hit and runs occurred in parking lots for unattended vehicles that were not solved, fortunately. There were 3 vehicles reported stolen, kind of in the similar, the 2002 F-350, a 2004 Honda, and then unfortunately, the Hyundai Elantra is this one was 2017. That's in that same problem as the Kia manufacturer with the non-chipped keys, or the other easy to steal, if you will. Other than that, relatively good month. We have the planning of the National Night Out coming up, and that is all I have for you, sir. Unless I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do so.
Questions from the council? No, I do have a question. I was at our 4-city mayor coffee meeting this morning, and I said I'd follow up on this with you. And I wasn't aware of this, and actually the mayor from Troutdale mentioned it. And there is a text 911 on the cars. Tell us about, because none of us knew what it, and how is it up and running? And is that an effective way to get a 911 call?
It is. They do generally prefer the phone calls, I think was the last messaging, but you can absolutely text 911 on a smartphone. I am not an expert on it, but I'd be happy to find out and get all the information for you in the next meeting. I know that it is possible, and I know that they receive calls, or excuse me, texts every day on 911, and they are effective. And
well, maybe, and again, there was only one mayor out of 4 that knew it existed. And I don't want to put you on the spot now, but if you want to, if it's effective, we should let people know. If it's still kind of experimental and it's kind of clunky, or doesn't get the information to the right people fast enough.
My understanding is that it's a robust system that's been in place for a while, but like I said, I'll do some research on that, and at the next meeting, I'll have that answer, or I'll communicate it back to Greg before then. And if we want to include that in the city messaging,
I mean, and again, it's not, it's to just see if it's one we should promote more.
Sure.
Yeah.
I worked closely with BOIC in a previous job, and the 911 texting, it's really good for people who are hearing impaired.
Okay.
They can text domestic violence situations.
Yeah.
Like it is up and running. It's very trustworthy and robust. Like you said,
Excellent.
people can absolutely use it now. And it has been for years.
Are they chatbots, or are they?
No,
actual
they're
languages?
operators. Yeah. And it comes up on a chat on their window, because I did a couple, what are they called, sit-alongs, I think. And it comes up on the operator's window, and they chat back with them. So it's a chat for them, and it's a text for the user.
Could you find out if it's like a better response rate as opposed to?
So maybe another little conversation at the next meeting. And Greg, as we research this more, maybe something, and maybe we put it in our newsletters.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I thought we did a little blurb maybe a year or so ago that it was like a new feature for this system. I'd have to double check. But happy, yeah, as we learn more about it, and clearly it's been around for a while, more mature, kind of, that could be the next newsletter article for the sheriff's office.
Sure.
All right.
Happy to do it. I'll report back when I know more.
All right, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the reports. All right, we do have to take action. Any questions on the review of bills or anything under the contracts? No questions? Question. Thank you. All right, Mr. Donovan and systems development charge rate study.
All righty. My name is Steve Donovan. I'm your rate consultant. My office address is 9600 Southwest Oak, Suite 335, Portland, Oregon. What we're doing now is sort of the follow through from your master plans. You've spent quite a bit of time and effort on your water and sewer master plans, which were recently adopted. Now we're looping back to see, given these plans, what's the financial impact of them? So the first piece of this pie is going to be me talking about 15, 16 slides. We're going to try to be as quick as we can. If we confuse you or something is not right, just stop us and we'll talk about it. Then the next 16 slides are going to be a deep dive into geek speak. With me, right? You're going to talk about, I'm going to make some recommendations on rates, and Seth is going to tell you the risk associated with those recommendations. And there is a real risk.
Let me just remind the council, we're not taking action on this tonight. This is for discussion, and our next meeting, unless we know our next meeting, we may or may not take action. I don't know if, I don't have it.
I believe the next meeting is for SDCs because that's relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
And then more detailed workshops this fall time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So we'll have some time to noodle this around ourselves. So thank you.
there you go. So I'm going to kick off the PowerPoint right now, and they should be on your screens as you see. The first thing we're going to talk about is SDCs, and you all know what a system development charge is. Is that correct? Okay, I'm going to walk you through what a SDC is. So SDCs are one-time fees charged on new development. Only new development pays this one time. It's not a monthly rate or a fee. It's a cost to a developer to purchase either built or planned capacity in your infrastructure. They have been in place for a long, long time. City of Corvallis has had them since 1944, for example. So it's a tried and true. Other states call them development impact fees, Utah, Arizona, so on. So it's all the same thing. By statutes, they consist of two components, well, actually three components. One is the reimbursement fee. That's the fee a developer charges, it gets charged to purchase built capacity. You've got systems out there that are built and there's capacity to tie into them. That developer is now being charged to reimburse you for that built capacity. The next one is the improvement fee, which is planned future capacity, your master plans, which you've just completed. And usually improvement fees are the largest component of a system development charge because that goes out for 20 years. And then the last piece is a small administration fee, which the statute allows for you to recover costs of reporting and developing SDCs. SDCs are by definition restricted. They can only be used for the purpose that they were intended. And perhaps some of you are aware that there has been abuse of SDCs in the past. Certain communities have used SDCs for things like building city halls or like paying for swimming pools. So the statute, and your attorney will tell you this, the statute is very clear and very structured on what SDCs are and how you can use the funds and how you report those funds. SDCs have an impact on infrastructure development. The more SDCs we have, the quicker we can develop. And it also has a future on the composition of your tax base. And you have to consider that. SDCs are not a requirement. The statute says you can charge this much per the statutory calculation. It doesn't say you have to. I've got many cities across the state that don't charge SDCs because they want to attract development. And from a policy standpoint, they're saying, we want our ratepayers to support growth. We don't want growth to pay for growth. Cities like Reedsport or Coos Bay, they've been decimated because their fishing industry and their logging industries have gone away. So they're trying to attract new development in lieu of that. It's a policy that can be made. And then this is the point I talk about here of you having to strike a balance. Because we can calculate the maximum amount of the SDC does not necessarily mean you have to charge it. And there's many communities here in the Portland area that like Clackamas County, their sewer SDC could be upwards of $20,000 based on the statutory method, but they don't charge that much because they just think it's an hindrance to development. So this extremely busy little chart here that you see is for you guys to read tonight when you go home before you go to bed.
Mhm.
And it just tells you technically what the reimbursement fee is, the improvement fee is, and the compliance costs. Now, here is the bottom line. Here's the answer. And these pie charts show you, based on our calculations of using the statutory tests and your master plan capital improvement plans, what we're proposing for the water and wastewater SDCs for the average single family home. And we're proposing that the sum of those two go from your current rate of $7,384 up to $10,700 or $10,212. That is what you can charge, and that's what we recommend that you charge so that you can keep up with your development needs and having growth pay for growth. Now, here's a chart of for that same single family customer that would connect to your system. These are the SDCs, these are water. And you'll see both the light lime green and the darker green, current and proposed. Your SDCs are very affordable is what this chart is trying to tell you relative to other communities. I'm doing a water SDC study in Washington County right now, and the city of Hillsborough charges $14,000 for a water SDC for a new single home.
Just water?
Just water,
This is for a 3/4 inch.
3/4
5/8.
inch. Right,
And you said Hillsborough.
Hillsborough.
So our current rate right now for that 7,000, is that paid up front?
Good point. Good question. It is. It's paid on the time of development approval. So when that guy comes to your office and wants to pull a permit, at permit issuance time, he has to pay. And I'm not sure, Greg, do you have a funding option that you have with the city? Do you do funding for SDCs?
We have to allow it because I believe the state has that Bancrofting.
Right.
We've only used it, I believe, once, and it was for an ADU. They then quickly sold the property, things changed and
then
paid
goes with
it
the
off.
land. Right.
But that's the only time we've used it. Otherwise, they pay at the time of construction.
Right.
We also allow it for the time after completion. If they kind of want to build it, sell it, then pay it, we allow for that as well. So we try to add some options, but also security in that we will receive the funds.
And here is the chart of the wastewater. And in this case, you can see it's even, you are very affordable now, and you will continue to be relative to these other communities. There's sewer is getting to be a hot button across the state because it is just so darn expensive, as you are intimately aware. And then this is a chart because we didn't want to think that you can work within a vacuum here, because water and sewer SDCs are not the only SDCs that are charged. There's parks, there's transportation, and there's a storm drainage. So here is the just a quick snapshot of Wood Village now and Wood Village proposed. You are within very close to the lower end of the range. Troutdale's 27,000. Once again, in Washington County, you've got to add in the school surcharge, which they call a property or a sales tax. They also have a a countywide transportation SDC that's $10,000 per house. The average house now in Washington County is about $40,000 to $45,000 in SDCs. Before you put a shovel of dirt in the ground, you're paying that fee. In San Francisco, it's $100,000. So let's talk about rates, and I'll give you the long and the short of it. Water is strong. That utility is in good shape. You've got good reserves and you're in a good position. We estimate that the fund will end this year, June 30th, with a cash balance right around $1 million, $957,000. And you have, that even takes into account the cost allocations that you've done over your recent budget cycles to allocate between the utilities. We don't indicate that there's going to be any new borrowing involved for the water over the 5-year forecast, which also includes cash financing of your capital improvements. The water fund has about 324 balance by the end of our 5-year forecast. So you got $1 million now. We think you can pay for all your capital costs. And even with that, you'll have $324,000 in cash left. So congratulations. That's a good job. In order to make that work, and we start out with $1 million, we pay your capital costs, we pay your operating costs, and we have the money left over, we're going to need 4% per year rate increases, which is right now we're hoping that's what inflation is going to look like over the next 5 years. If inflation runs away and we can't control it because we can't, then we'll come back and we'll visit with you on that. But right now, the forecast indicates 4% per year just to keep up with inflation.
And that's early as just, I mean, that's just to keep up.
That's just to keep up.
Yeah. So that's a decision the council would make. Is that good enough just to keep up? Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean,
No, I think you're in good shape. You've got a master plan. You've got a business plan of how to get you over the next 5 years. The thing that I've got a recommendation is don't go more than 5 years. Because I have no idea what it's going to be like after 5 years.
Mhm.
Some communities, they try to do a 10-year plan and they want to know how much money they're going to have in the bank and how many pencils and paper clips they'll have after year 8. And you go,
yeah.
I don't know. I think this is a good plan. It's a prudent and reasonable plan. If something changes, we'll come back to you. That's why we have a business plan.
Mhm. And these can be reviewed and modified yearly?
They will be reviewed and modified yearly
Yeah.
with your budget.
So you can make, we can make those decisions during the budget season.
Absolutely. And that's what these guys should be doing for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sewer, oh, I'm gonna miss my part. Sewer is not in good shape. We're gonna need to make some decisions in the future here. We estimate that you're gonna end this year with about $535,000 in the sewer fund. We are gonna have to borrow, and we've got a plan to borrow for the Wood Village trunk. This is not news to you. The Wood Village trunk sewer is a major project right out here in Halsey. I'm worried sick about it because I'm doing a lot of sewer capital funding projects now. And the construction costs, any of you folks in construction? Construction costs are even more inflationary now than consumer costs. And things like C900 PVC pipe and couplings and programmable logic controllers and things like that, the delays in getting them are difficult. So we've got a budget for about $4 million that we're going to borrow for this project. The project is, from an engineering standpoint, been on your books for a long time. And is there capacity or isn't there? These guys are going to be continuing to work on that. Your engineering team is definitely working on that. Public Works is clearly aware of, do we really need to do this project? And we estimate, based on borrowing for this project, paying your operating costs, we'll have about $500,000 in the sewer fund at the end of the 5-year forecast. But we're going to have rate increases.
Well, basically, that line's been there since we turned off our original wastewater treatment plant when the city was a population of maybe 6,000
Oh,
No, I'm sorry. It was a lot less than,
but 1,000, you know, because
Maybe
I believe it was
1,000 people. Yeah.
early 70s is when
Yeah.
that happened.
So, intuitively, you would say, well, gosh, of course, it's probably come to the end of its useful life and it isn't sized correctly
Yeah.
for this community.
right.
We want to make sure we understand that before we start digging holes. And
Yeah.
John he's all over that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a quandary and we'll find out. There might be other opportunities to minimize the cost through other engineering alternatives, but we got to replace a pipe. It's the biggest cost of replacing the pipe is digging the darn hole and filling the hole back up.
When we start surcharging, then we're too late.
Then you'll know.
Yeah. In your printed material, the estimated cost for that trunk line, 3.5 to 4 million, as well as inflation.
Oh, the 4 million, we're going to try to get going because in 2026, we think that takes inflation into account. I think
Okay.
in the master plan, it was 3.5 and it's inflated up.
Okay.
We've also got a funding source for you. It's a very good one.
So you're anticipating inflation
Yes.
in that? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we'd want to fund that project if you undertake it. I think you're already doing some design work with your ARPA money on that project right now. Yeah, so you're already looking at the engineering side of it. The state Clean Water State Revolving Loan Program. It's funded through the Clean Water Act and administered by the states. I've worked on over $1 billion worth of projects that have been funded for it. You are an absolutely perfect candidate for it. You get very good terms. You get a discounted interest rate. You don't have term coverages. The covenants that go with conventional municipal bonds don't apply. So it's a good program, and we clearly recommend that you direct staff if you're going to go that way to get at that
Is that
program.
program consistent from year to year, or is it one that's subject to legislative cuts and?
Actually, it was started in 1970 and was funded for the original Clean Water Act through capital grants. And every time, and it's sort of a perpetual motion machine. I borrow the money to him, he pays me back, I borrow to him, and it continually comes back into the tank. And so it's always rolling through the tank. And as of right now, the DEQ has more money than they have applications.
Okay.
So that's a very good thing. The question is, if you don't do the project, John comes back and says, aha, I figured out a way that we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Then sewer could go down to 4% per year. We could get it back. That's how impactful this project is on our projected rate increases. So here is a quick look at the water rates for a standard single family home with six units of water. That would be 600 cubic feet, where 1 cubic foot of water is 7.48 gallons. So 4,200 gallons of water, call it. And your rates are very low, very affordable relative to the neighbors. And then here's sewer. Your rates are getting on the top or on the higher end. You already pay a high rate, and we're recommending that you make that go up even higher.
Rockwood's on there twice. Is that?
They pay primarily through Gresham, and they
I see.
add on to it.
Thank you.
And then here is the same bar chart where it's water, sewer, stormwater. The interesting thing that I want to talk about to you guys is the general services charge, the sort of the light tan. Many communities now are going to fees for what used to be property tax based, a park fee, a cop fee, a green space fee, a sidewalk fee. That's coming your way. So I just be aware of it, that it's going to be more and more prevalent as communities do this.
Fire districts are another way of placing that funding.
Yeah, because you can clamp onto the utility bill. I mean, it's the legacy of Measure 5.
Yeah.
And so as you can see here, Wood Village, you're kind of, right in the mix with everybody else in your neck of the woods. I mean, in this East Multnomah County area. So now here are the recommendations, and then Seth is going to geek out on you as why I got rocks in my head. So the first one is you currently give 400 cubic feet of water on your average water or any water customer as an allowance in their monthly base charge. So that low volume water users, they really don't pay a commodity charge because your bill consists of a base charge and a commodity charge based on the metered water you use. You've had this forever. This is a very common way of making rates. There's not a darn thing wrong with it. The problem is low water use customers end up paying a fee for water that they wouldn't use anyway. If you went to a pure consumption-based rate, the small households, the retired single person who uses 2 units of water a month is now basically covering for the larger families in that base fee. If you eliminate that 400 and go to a pure sort of pay-as-you-go thing, we decrease the base charge and then increase the commodity charge correspondingly. Low volume users could benefit by avoiding and controlling better. Large volume customers would pay more. What's your revenue at risk? It's volatility to your revenue. And as I tell these guys, in your relevant range of production, all of your costs really are fixed. If you didn't sell a gallon of water to your water system, you'd still have to run it, right? Because you fire protection.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, there really is no variability in our world. But the way we make rates, we want to make customers have the ability to avoid and control. John, got a question?
No, I'm good.
The second one is your senior citizen discount rate on utilities. Yours is kind of unusual in my experience because there's no means testing to it, and there's no annual review. So, for instance, I get the senior citizen discount at my address 111 A Street. I move to 112 B Street. The next resident comes into A Street gets the discount because nobody checks. There's no annual review. And the other thing is means testing. How do we know that you're a low-income senior that's deserving of a discount? We don't means test it. Most communities do, either through tax returns or through income testing.
I think I want to clarify something on that discount example. So 111 A Street, let's say they don't move to 112 A Street, but their children move in and the adult moves to a care home or out of state and doesn't change the utilities. Utilities never change. They don't call like, oh, I want to put the name of my account. So we assume Joe Hill is still at 111 A Street and it's Jane Hill, their daughter. So when there is a change in account, we do catch that. But it is very clear it's a retired discount. So if you're drawing a retirement pension, you're eligible. That pension could be $10 million, could be $1. It's not means tested.
So that's at a minimum, we'd like to see you move to a means testing on that to make sure that you're getting qualified seniors who can really get the test. And the means testing, there's great examples all over this area here. Portland's got it. I think I'm not sure if Gresham's got what kind they've got, but there's one in place there. So we need to clean that up, in my judgment.
What does means testing looks like? Like they just have to submit a form or like a.
Well, in some cases, I've seen it. You've got to submit your tax return as proof. And others I've seen it is a form. I attest an attestation, an affidavit that says I promise and I'm not lying.
And now as it stands, like someone could just say, I'm a senior, like when they set up, like.
They have to actually submit proof of a retirement income. That's what they submit right now.
Okay.
But it's not, they get it regardless of what that retirement income is.
So if you
because it's in the code, it's a retired discount.
So this would change it.
Okay. Go on.
Oh,
Sorry.
So this would change it from, it doesn't matter what their income is to it matters what their income is.
Exactly.
So if they had a $500 a month water bill during the summer, and they still didn't, if they liked green grass, for example, and they didn't make a lot of money, but they've still wanted green grass, Would you penalize them for that? If they
The-
didn't make a lot of money?
I'm not so,
They're not necessarily tied, the retired discount program isn't necessarily tied to changing the consumption allowance part.
no, that's a separate thing. But also, the discount is only on the base. It is not on the consumption charge.
Okay. That
So it's
clarified
only
it
on the
for me.
base.
There you go.
Count.
Okay.
And what we've
Yeah.
done typically with our means testing program, what we did back in the ARPA funds.
If people are listening, they can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. What we did on the CARES Act and the ARPA funds, when it came to means testing, was we just verified that they were in a different federal or state means tested program, Women, Infant, Children, SNAP, Oregon Health Plan, as long as they could prove that they were in a program that had a means testing verification. We didn't necessarily need anything from income. I think we might have had 2 people out of 140 that actually weren't a part of those that did submit income, but it was a very small percentage. Most people who are in need already are part of other means tested programs offered by the federal or state.
I think we have a pretty good idea who those people are now in the city too. And of course, it won't always be the same, but
And the other thing
Pretty
that I
consistent.
think is relevant here is this is would be for senior citizens who are low income, who also own their own single family home. And just anecdotally, we know that most of our population who are low income tend to gravitate towards multifamily housing, either apartment or mobile home parks. And there's no discount available to them because they're billed on a master meter. So we do have a need, but it doesn't necessarily match up with, there's not a lot of old, poor and people in Wood Village who also own their own home. If that.
Yeah, this is only for those directly billed by the city, not necessarily a bill they get from their manufactured home park, manager, or company, or an apartment manager. These are
Condo association.
directly billed by us. So it is a smaller number compared to what the need probably could be.
Next thing, wastewater rates. Your current sewer rates for single family and multifamily are fixed. You pay a fixed fee of $50 a month. What the number is.
53, I think.
$53, right? And it doesn't give the sewer customer the opportunity to avoid and control his fee. The standard industry method to do that is to charge based on winter average water consumption. So what we would do is say, John, your bill, we would take a look at what water you used on an average month between November and April. Take that monthly average. That would be the amount of, quote, water that went into the sewer system every month, and we'd use that for your monthly billing every month throughout the year. Most communities do that. We converted Gresham to that methodology a couple of years ago. And
what we're doing right now is a straight 53.
right, regardless of
For single family,
for single family and multifamily, right?
no,
And
just single family.
just single family. Okay.
Multifamily has a flat and a consumption.
And a consumption, okay. So we would think that would be fairer to customers because the customer, once again, the single individual in a home that uses very little water, 1 or 2 units in the winter, would then be able to avoid and control his bill better because he's got a variable component to that bill. It puts your revenue at risk, not as much as the water, but it does inject variability into your revenue. You guys are running a business here. Revenue is critical to you because these are capital intensive industries that you're running. So you've got to balance the risk of lost revenue because if the revenue goes down, the Seth and Steve show are going to be back in your face saying we need a rate increase. Because we gave people a great incentive to save. They took our message and saved. So to reward them, we're going to raise their rates. That's the dark side of conservation and recycling. The less you use, the more we have to charge you because our costs are fixed over that range. So it's a policy call. And now Seth is going to geek out on why I'm all goofed up on saying.
And Steve's been great to work with. I don't think he has rocks in his head, maybe a few that rolled out at some point in the past, but what we're painting the picture for here is for SDCs, the method, like Steve said, the methodology is fairly prescriptive. It's been heavily litigated, heavily regulated. There's not a lot of policy level decisions from council, but for do you charge the full amount or not? You can't say, well, we want to put more into the improvement, or we think there should be more cost in the reimbursement. That's all based off of our master plan, which was done by an engineering firm. We had some ability to kind of talk about whether or not some things were private or city and what the timing was, but in reality, it's fairly straightforward. So we'll be coming back to you in September with some SDC rate ordinances based off of the master plans for your consideration. As a council, for policy level questions, you have a lot more freedom and ability on water and sewer rates. Some communities charge water rates based on number of fixtures, some charge based on square footage, some charge different commercial classes. I think Troutdale does different commercial rates based on what type of business you're running. There's not a right answer. It's really an area where you guys have a lot more choice and ability to kind of set policy. And so as we were talking about some of these things, we just wanted to point out that there isn't an easy answer or a win-win. There's always a trade-off that we're gonna end up having. And so I want to talk a little bit about what rates and users look like in Wood Village so that you can kind of get a sense for that and have some idea of what questions and what kind of issues and scenarios we might want to run at a future meeting to talk about at a work session to give you guys more information on how this might end up affecting the bills. Because it's great to say we should make it more consumption driven, or we should change the means testing or offer these different programs to allow people to use less water and save money. But then what does that actually translate to? So I'm going to focus primarily on water. Sewer is very similar. The issues are similar, but this is kind of a good way to run through it. So this shows our water usage and revenue for a calendar year. And so residential, single family residential, multifamily is all of our apartment complexes and manufactured home parks, and business is all of our commercial industrial. So the interesting thing here is that if you look at our meters, 620 of our 720 meters are single family residential. So you think, oh, well, we're in almost an 80 or 90% community that is based off of single family residential. But when you look at the usage and revenue, single family residential only makes up about 20% of our revenue.
That is very unusual, by the way.
Yes.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
20%, only 20% of our water consumption, the amount of water we use and the revenue that's generated comes from single family residential. And as Steve said, I was surprised by that. I've worked in a couple of other cities and it's usually at least half comes from single family, and single family and multifamily is 75-80% of where you get most of your money. So what that means is that we have a lot of usage and revenue coming from business and commercial properties. And so what we did was we pulled some additional information based on account. And not only do we have a lot of our revenue coming from the business class, it's coming from a small number of accounts where we have 3 really large users, Odessa, Pressure Safe, and the industrial park. Now, the industrial park has 8 to 12 users in there. And so it's not one kind of monolithic, it's kind of more of a group meter for 8 to 10 smaller businesses. But and so it's relatively more stable. But, you know, if Odessa decides we're just going to turn this into a car lot rather than actually washing and processing cars, they're going to use a lot less water.
Does everybody, is that industrial park all single? It's a single meter, or it's a single meter?
Single meter.
Okay.
But as you can see, almost 40% of the revenue comes from those 3 accounts. Of the business revenue comes from those 3 accounts. And if you pull in another 7 accounts, it's almost 3/4 of the revenue. And here's just to give you an idea of how that compares. in comparison to what we get from residential. Those 10 accounts generate more revenue for us than all of the single family residential in Wood Village, the 630 accounts. And so it makes our revenue very sensitive to a small number of users, which you can look at this kind of two ways. You can look at this and be like, oh, well, we're able to keep rates down for everyone else because we have a couple of high volume water users. And if they went away, rates would have to go up. So for the last 10 years where they've been using a lot of water, it's driven up the amount of volume. It means that we can charge a lower per unit cost, which is great. The converse is that if two businesses left, we might be faced with a 10% rate increase just to make up from that. So it makes your system a little bit more volatile and a little bit more price sensitive. The other thing it does is if you want to start changing the volume rates or the base. So let's talk about kind of the bill. We have a base charge and we have a volume charge. Steve had mentioned, and I think this is true, that you generally want to shoot for about 2/3 of your revenue coming from your base charge, because that gives you some pretty good stability, insulates you from seasonal weather, it insulates you from a lot of turnover or vacancies in or properties leaving, because you're not entirely based on usage. And again, 90% of our costs are fixed. So in an ideal world, 90% of our cost revenue would come from the base, because then you wouldn't have any impacts if someone high volume user left, because everyone's being charged based on how your costs behave. So there's this kind of tension between your base and your volume. What this means with our business is that if we want to increase the volume charge, that's really going to impact on a substantial way in dollars those high volume users. Conversely, if we want to raise the base, I think the base charge for commercial is $70. If we want to raise that, in order to make up that amount of the amount of money to replace, let's say you want to move away from volume and towards base, you're going to have to double the base charge, which is going to impact everyone here in this tail end of your distribution. Everyone's going to see their bills jump 30 or 40% if you want to shift more of that to the base. So you kind of, because of that distribution, you're kind of caught between, if we want to shift more to volume, we're going to have a couple big companies that are really going to feel that and hurt and come in and probably be talking to council about that. If we try and shift cost to the base, the other 47 accounts are probably not going to like that. So it creates a little bit of an issue when you try and have the ability to move things between the base and the volume charge. Now, Steve came in and we agree with the idea that, the best thing we can do for kind of low income and kind of means low income and the ability for people to kind of cost control is to allow for people to pull that 4 units out of the base, so that the people using 2 or 3 units a month pay less than they are now. And conversely, to give them a wastewater charge that also has a variable rate. So if they use less, they pay less. Because most of the comments we get from people are, I don't use as much water or sewer as my neighbor, but I'm paying the same thing because we have, my wastewater there's no volume charge and we both pay 4 units whether we use them or not. So that we generally get that from people who are lower income or have small household sizes, which again are probably the same population of people who are seniors, who are more conscious of that or more sensitive to have less ability to work overtime if they're getting retirement income. So in that sense, in that regard, it made a lot of sense to look at those things. But there's a downside to that. So this is, we ran kind of by classification, how much of that revenue is collected. So that pie chart that split the revenue into 3 chunks, how much of that comes from the base charge, how much of that comes from the volume charge. So you'll see that this is our current water revenue split. And you can see that business, because it has such a large volume, the base charge is a very small part of the actual revenue raised from that. So, but for multifamily residential, it's a very large part, primarily because we include those 4 units in the base charge. So I had said that you want to have about a 2/3, 1/3 split is kind of what the average is. Right now, we're a little under that. 5545. We ran a scenario where we actually pulled out the 4 units out of the base and did a kind of a rate, moved more of that to the volume charge and kind of looking at the same set of data, which is your 2022 calendar year. And when we did that, this is what happened is that, the business didn't change, but all of a sudden the multifamily, instead of this being 80%, it went down. And the same thing on the single family. So now instead of our base charge making up the majority of our revenue, the volume charge became much more the majority of our revenue.
But if I heard you right, we want the base to produce the
So-
2/3.
So here's the thing is that from giving people the ability to control their water bill, this makes sense. But what this does is it moves us further away from revenue stability.
Put your board of directors hat on.
Yeah, it's, and this is important. We need to know that the variance here and really the give and the go here.
Right.
And so well, keep going here. I just want to keep the concepts and clear.
You're getting it. You're all getting it. You absolutely are getting what we're selling here.
So with that, volatility in and of itself is not bad. And there are some things that you can do to help mitigate that, but those also have trade-offs. So 3 options you might have if you decide we're going to make the system more volatile, but we want to also build in some more cushion is you could, when we do our forecasting for future projections, we use kind of the 12-month average, kind of what the long-term average is. And hopefully that means that for 5 summers, we're going to be over that. And for 5 summers, we're going to be below that. But if we have but that's assuming that we have a relatively stable revenue base. If you were to tell me that, oh, you're going to have, instead of being 2/3 of your revenue coming from the base, only 1/3 of that, then I'm going to look at kind of the seasonal variation and be like, instead of forecasting, kind of the middle, half of your summers are hotter and you sell more water and half of your summers are wetter and you sell less. I'm going to try and shoot for something like 2 of your summers are low and 8 are high. That way we don't end up running out of money. Collecting more money is less of a problem from a financial sustainability than collecting too little money. And so that's going to mean my inclination is to be more conservative, but again, if you assume you're going to sell less water, that means the rate you have to charge to get that same amount of revenue goes up. And so there's a trade-off there between being conservative on the forecast means that you're going to have higher rates. The other thing you can do, 2 other options that you can do is you can put in some higher contingency or fund balance requirements. But again, that money ultimately has to come from rates. Or you can just say, rather than doing 4 years at 4%, you might have 1 year at 4% and we have a really wet summer. And the next year I come back and say, we need an 8% increase on water. And then if we have a really hot summer, I might come back and say it needs to be 2%. So again, you're either comfortable with, 4% a year is nice to communicate because it gives you some stability and some good communication and people can plan for it. You can also deal with volatility by saying, you know what, we're going to set the rate. The rate's going to be whatever it needs to be for us to recover and get back to where we need to be. And that could be 2%, could be 10%, but it might change a lot from year to year, depending on your usage, because you set up your system to be much more dependent on volume charges. So, let's see, I think that was the last graphic slide. So again, this is the start of a conversation. We wanted to kind of very big picture, let you guys know kind of what we're looking at. We've already run some scenarios. We're looking at generating some winter averaging from the data that we already have, see what the impacts of that are. But we wanted to kind of get this in front of you guys so that you could kind of have a chance to digest it before we get into like some additional scenarios or modeling, some sample rates and what that might mean. Bring you back, here's what this would look like for a single family home that uses 2 to 3 units of water versus one that uses 10 units versus a small to medium sized commercial versus one of really large. We can generate all that for you, but really at this point, it's kind of what we wanted to.
Let me see if there's any questions. Okay.
Sure.
Council.
right off, I see something that we could do as maybe a floating decimal point based on weather. And I'm being serious here, you know, like if it's hot or whatever, that you have and we're using more water, then you charge the customer less, wouldn't it be? That'd be right. And then when the volume goes up, and then if we have a wet winter or wet summer, I mean, then the floating decimal would go, it would raise up where we'd end up charging more. And I'm just saying that, and I know you're going to go, no, that you can't do that, but I'm just saying that that could be a
My poker face
possibility.
gave it away. Huh?
What?
Poker face gave it away.
Yeah, it did.
The problem that I've got with, we're trying to get that last inch of rate equity out is we lose the customer's ability to understand it. And I've run into this number of times where,
So this has been tried?
oh, well, variations on that theme, many variations. And then you got to find out, can your billing system actually cope with it? Can you actually deliver on that strategy? I've had a situation where we wanted to come up with a multivariate approach that you did. And the billing contractor, the software said, that'll be $200,000 to change your billing system. So I know it sounds silly, but generally, I don't want to have a rate structure that I can't explain to every person in the room. And if we lose them, then they get angry at us.
Without a slideshow.
Well,
Right.
You got to be explain it in a conversation
Exactly.
across the desk.
well, I'm not
Exactly.
saying to float it in the point of you know, 1% and 3%. I'm saying you had that one chart up here where you could, yeah, you're going back up. There you go. For that usage consumption there, if you had that floating within 1% or something. I'm not saying to make it so much that it's going to kill the, you
We
know,
want to, because
kill the
then
cook.
Greg over here, he's running a store. He wants to make sure his revenue is predictable. He wants to have a level of predictability. So we've got to keep that in mind too.
I get that,
Yeah.
but just.
It's something to take into account.
So it's possible, and you know, we can explore what that could look like, both in terms of a practicality standpoint. When you make the adjustments, is it,
Yeah.
you know, a monthly target, annually? Because if it's annually, it seems like you'd always be behind it because you had either a wet or dry summer. Now you're catching up, and then you're always adjusting it versus kind of like more of an on-demand style,
Yeah.
which
You'd be following gold, not trying to figure out what the stock market's doing in the
Right,
future.
Right. And you are blessed. I got to tell you that we're not coming back and saying, by the way, we're going to need 20% per year rate increases because your utility is in the ditch. Your
Yeah.
utility is not in the ditch.
No,
Okay.
You've got basically inflation-based adjustments, and there's not a darn thing wrong with your current rate structure. It
Right.
is coin of the realm. Many communities do exactly what you do right now. So they're not like we're not coming here waving our hands that there's a fire in
Yeah.
City Hall. We got to fix this.
yeah, there's a
and we're gonna
nearby
have to shut the door in 5 years or something.
community raised their water rate 36% this year.
I'm sorry.
There's a nearby community that raised their water rate 36% this year.
Oh,
Dang,
my gosh.
that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's
And so
that's
we're
just
looking at the
bad
margins of
management.
things.
Nearby, huh?
I have a question. When you say
They're-
like wetter summer versus drier summer, like I feel like our summers are just going to get hotter and drier. You know what I mean? Like I feel like basing things on weather.
You do put another layer of abstraction in there. Absolutely.
We've had
That
wet
you don't
summers,
have
though.
to do.
Hmm.
Since I've been on the council, and I don't know, probably in the last 5 years, we've had some wet summers. Well, when Bill was here, we were praying for dry, hot summers because we were not bringing in the money to be able to pay the bills.
Well, your prayers paid off, I think. It's going to get hot.
Well, you know, it's a point though that is probably we're going to get drier in certain years.
We certainly know the weather is
Still more often than we have.
severe on both spectrums.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Oh, I see.
Other questions? I have a couple I wanted to follow up on because I used your report, your paper report. So that's what I usually do. And then I highlight things. So that's why I'm flipping papers around. Other questions?
No, I mean, I think we've known for some time that the sewer also has been one of those accounts that we need to figure out how to generate a little bit more revenue and stabilize that. And so I think this is going to be crucial on what we really do and decide moving forward, because again, I think it's important to plan for the future, but not in a drastic way. As Greg mentioned, a neighboring community, 36% increase, that's definitely not where we want to be. So 4 or 5%, I think, yes, is going to be a big hit, but I think it's more manageable than a 36% increase.
How often will we need to increase it? Like this much? I think you probably went over that, like yearly, are we gonna have to?
Yearly.
So one of the things, just to reiterate here, we are not in trouble. All right, we're in pretty good shape.
No,
So our decision making is not going to be as painful as it might seem right now.
and frankly, my recommendations are rearranging furniture here.
And I do have one question for the mayor, John Singh.
Well,
Could-
he flips through.
Yeah. Could there be like a different, I guess, fee structure for like residential and multifamily versus commercial?
You have that now.
We have that
You
now.
have that now.
Right now, our commercial pays, I think, just over $4 per CF, and residential is $2 per CCF. And part of the reason why we brought up that disparity is we talked internally that maybe it made more sense to bring those more in line with each other. But when you do that, that would really negatively impact a lot of small businesses and really benefit large users. That really what we want to do. And that's not a question staff can answer. That's a question with council.
That is a policy call.
It's a policy.
I guess I was thinking of like, residents who have that base fee and then they pay extra on, consumption or whatever. Could we, in some form, I don't want to say decrease the base fee on those businesses and increase the cost of consumption?
Sure.
Or is that originally, that's right now how it is?
Now that you could do that. You could increase the consumption charge more than what it currently is now for business. But again, you're going to have Odessa and Pressure Safe in here saying, why are we paying more than we are now? Like, explain it to me. Why we're paying more and everyone else is paying
Or
less.
conversely, Odessa and Pressure Wash could say, we are going to consume, you've sent us a message. You've told me
Yeah,
what to
got
do.
it.
We're going to use less. Now, all of a sudden, we've got less revenue. Our costs haven't changed. We're going to come back in January and say, by the way, we got to raise your rates again
Got it. Yeah.
because it's a zero sum game.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Mayor, because I can go back at least 3 finance directors past Peggy Mentor, Wyatt Parno, and then 2 others passed before him. When we paid off the sewer debt that we had of $1,200,000 for our little project that we did down on Sandy Boulevard, that took us, we took money that we had basically saved for about 15 years, maybe longer to do that. So you scared me tonight, just so you know, that you're saying, well, we're going to have to, it seemed like it was off the cuff. We're going to have to borrow $4 million to rebuild our trunk line. And I'm like going, okay, so our city hall, we spent over almost 20 years to save the money to be able to build this at $6 million.
6.5 all in.
$6.5
yeah.
million. Well, the sewer has to pay for sewer.
Right.
Okay. So based on that, we cannot save any kind of money on our sewer.
You're
Yeah, you're
absolutely
both
right.
shaking your head
You're
at that.
absolutely right.
Yeah. And so we're going to have to borrow that money. That means that the sewer rate's going to have to go up to cover that.
No question.
That means it's going to go up a lot,
8% per year.
8% a year, and then plus the interest rate.
Hmm.
Right?
That is, it's 8% was all in.
8%.
That's all in. But when you think about it, you think about the rule of 7. If we raised rates at 10% per year, your current sewer bill of 53 cents, $53 a month would double in 7 years. So at 8%, we're going to double your current sewer rate in probably about 9 years, 10 years. So that's the kind of pain we're talking about here.
And that's also why we're sharpening the pencils and looking at the trunk line comprehensively. And are there, I'll call it value engineering ways to squeeze more out of what we currently have or do some tweaks to it? So it's not a 4 million complete rebuild, or do we need a 27-inch, because Keller can only use the data we gave. And now they made the recommendation. We're getting second eyes on that and looking
Yeah.
a little more comprehensively. Is this a right now project? Is this another 10 or 15 year project?
Oh,
What
yeah,
does that project look like?
But as you know, the city of Portland, they put off doing their big pipe project for I don't know how many years.
Oh, yeah.
And it has cost them billions of dollars. And we don't want to put
Billions
our,
with a B. Yeah.
yeah, with a B. And we don't want to put our citizens in that kind of situation either. Anytime anybody throws at me value engineering, I just go, oh, I start squirming over that. I got too many.
This isn't trying to use duct tape and caulking. This is trying to make sure
Well, yeah,
that what the
but we need to do it
recommendations are
sensibly.
solid.
And Mark, we wanted to be honest and straightforward with you coming up front. We're talking 8% per year. That is a big increase.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to drag that on.
Well, no,
Mayor.
I want to go back because when you were asking the question, Counselor, take me back to where cities get their money when they got to do one of these major products. You were talking about bonds that are available and if I won't try to quote you, but they're pretty reasonable in the scope of capital improvements.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The Clean Water State Revolving Loan Program has done more for the nation's rivers and the environment than anything I've ever worked with in my career. We've put billions of dollars into clean water projects.
So should we have to, let's say this trunk line
Yeah.
doesn't last but 3 years, 4 years, or ours, when it gets done being surveyed, it's sooner than we expect. We would go to that as a potential source of funding because there's no way we're going to raise rates enough
No,
to pay for
no,
it. So
it's untenable.
we would have to be going there.
Unless we push the project out and
Yeah.
start to build up
Yeah.
slowly. But even then, the alternative wouldn't be, if we didn't do the state program, it would be to try and do a municipal bond,
Municipal
a revenue bond,
Yeah.
A revenue
Yeah.
bond.
which is fairly common.
Yeah.
But Mayor, since I've been on the council, we have done everything we possibly can to stretch this out as far as we can with our infiltration and inflow to keep that from surging or, and to keep it to where we don't have to do what we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
And
Well-
if that makes sense.
Well, I think
And
the city has
we've reached
done.
that point of where.
I know it's
what is
been
the
on your books
capacity
for
on
at
that
least
line?
10 years. It's
Our-
been a high priority project for 10 years on
Yeah,
your.
that's what I'm getting at.
Well, and I get it. That's
Yeah,
why I'm
okay.
asking the question of how we're going to fund this when it comes time to fund, and it is not going to be with rate increases.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my
We're
point.
there.
That's my
We're at the
point.
frontier.
Yeah.
as they call
So let me go to a couple questions here.
Yeah.
We have $1 million in the wastewater system capital improvement plan for Arata Road. Is that imminent? And
No.
Okay.
No, the real big project is the trunk line. Everything else is actually mostly development driven, which you
Okay.
can either capture through a development agreement, depending on the size of that development, or you've got your SDCs to then make improvements
Okay.
to correct those deficiencies. A lot of the deficiencies outlined are slope related, not necessarily the size of pipe. For reason, the grade just kind of flattens out, and so the pipe fills a little different than what would be optimal.
Yeah. Next question is the construction costs, as you've mentioned, is, it's way more than what our inflation rates are showing. On your chart in the back of your document.
The engineering
Yeah.
record, that's why I put it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's showing like, how did they get that number of 7%? It's not 7%. I mean, in reality.
Well, it's actually come down since 7%. Recent activity, it's starting to come back down. But yeah, you're talking about the last 2 years during COVID, 6% per year, 7% per year.
Yeah.
That is a very high. Look at the history. Construction costs have been going around 2-3% for year after year after year. Then they tripled during COVID, but now they're coming back down.
Okay, yeah, but I heard you at the beginning. I just wanted to check my reality with what I thought I heard you say.
Well,
It's still going up.
oh yeah, it's still going up.
I know material supplies are going down in some areas, but all right. So I just wanted to check those numbers if that the construction cost is going down.
The rate of change in the construction costs is going down. The absolute cost of construction is still going up. You see what the difference?
Rate
between
of
the two?
change, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not going up as fast.
So your calculus from back in
Hallelujah.
college,
Hallelujah.
the first derivative.
Yeah.
I'll pay you.
Okay, I did one more question, back to SDCs. You're recommending at this point, I'm looking at the SDCs for sewer. If we're going to have to spend a bunch of money at some point on sewers, right? Why wouldn't we go up higher than what you're doing, what you're recommending on water? Why wouldn't we go a little higher?
Could you turn to
SDC?
page 20 in your report and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because we can't.
10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it.
Yes,
You want to take a break? Your numbers are too small on that pages. I can't.
make the font smaller.
Page. It's a team effort. All right, I'm looking at
You
it.
see table 10 on page 20. See those percentages, those blue percentages?
Yes.
Those are based on engineering numbers that come from your master plan. And the statutory requirement, good thing we got a lawyer here, tells you you can only charge the capacity increasing component of the project cost to STCs. So you'd say, gosh, well, let's add more to the cost.
Yeah.
Well, the cost of the Wood Village Trunk project is 94% replacement and 6% growth based on the engineering analysis.
I see. The SCC column,
There you go.
that limits.
That's your limiting factor.
Well,
And
let's get rid of
if
that
we
column.
change that and we take,
Yes.
then you go to jail.
Only him though, right?
No,
Got it.
I'm okay with that.
no, we go for it.
So voting today?
Yeah. It depends on the visits I can get while I'm in jail. Yeah. Hey, the council president is
Sorry.
going to be, you're going with me, buddy. So's the business manager. Go ahead.
Of the home building community, we got to remember that there has been bad behavior in the past by governments for doing exactly what you were saying. Gosh, our costs are going up. Let's push more into the SDC fee. Based on what? So
Well,
now
I mean,
there's-
I wasn't suggesting we'd violate the law. What I was suggesting.
Oh,
I
come
thought-
on now.
I was not suggesting, are we recording? But I thought there was still a margin there.
It's
not.
very tight and it should be. It
Okay,
should
all
be.
right. So the margin of increase, it's not there to make the difference.
And
No.
then
Yeah.
these guys spend a very long time with your engineers on the master plan doing exactly this. I mean, from day one, they were going project by project. Are you sure this much is for growth and this much is for replacement? Because it has a big impact on the SDC.
Okay, I just want to double check if there's no more questions, just to get this lined out again. You've heard some conversation from council. Does council have any, is there any theme here you want to share with staff? I'm going to offer one,
You're going to offer what?
a theme.
A theme.
A theme in how we approach this, and that is lean on the side of stability. You know, lean,
Rocks in my head.
and I'm not suggesting we're ready to make any decision.
Of course not.
But if people are generally comfortable with how we have been administering this in this city, and it's been on stability.
Let's remember, you're signing the NPDS permits.
I don't know what that is.
I know you don't.
National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. That's what,
Stormwater.
and wastewater. Well, actually,
So when
Gresham-
it surcharges, you're the one going to jail.
Hey, I know you guys. You just want to all send me to prison. All right? But I ain't going. So, but anyway, getting back to it, is it, does that ring I'm trying to give our staff
It does.
some ideas here.
It does, because again, just the conversation of growth, and if that was an area that we could create some extra revenue, we're pretty capped out at how much we're gonna grow, or at least where the areas we can expand. So we need to be looking at exactly what the mayor says, is stability. And for, yes, in these next 5 years, which is great, but then, as you mentioned, year after year, revisiting that, is this still working? Is this still going to keep us ahead of that curve
Right.
to not have to do a huge 30% increase later on? Because then that's going to be where, where we really have to make more difficult decisions.
We were worried at one time when Grove Tech came into play that if we could even supply the amount of water that they might use.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we're not in that now. But if we had somebody else move in, and so when you're making a comment that, well, hey, we're built out, there could be somebody who might want to come here that could be a very much
Sure.
somebody who could use a lot of water, or use something that might help our city in a positive way.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful about things like that could,
Yeah.
Couple other, another food dehydrator, like Pressure Save.
Or we get a data center. Data centers use a ton of water for cooling, for example. I mean, that does change the dynamics of our
Right.
system. We're kind of looking at our current users and kind of projection of what that mix can be. And I think
that's where SDCs come in too.
And
So
we're looking at the projection is right, and we're not going to project out of, there's a whole bunch of what ifs that could happen. But for this conversation tonight, is there, and I'm only just, I don't want to try to guess what you're thinking here, but is it stability as in a pattern of what we have been doing in this city? Is that a thumbs up? Is it feel like you're leaning that way?
Not yet.
Okay, and I'm not saying yet. I'm just saying generally, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk to staff right now, and they're gonna go back based on this conversation. And I'm gonna ask them to come back with the modeling scenarios. Well, let's not have 12 different modeling scenarios.
not a problem.
Let's try to keep that down to a reasonable amount that we're going to be able to get our heads around when this comes back to us. So that's all I'm asking there is a general understanding, first off, what it means to be wise, being a stable and more creating more stability in your rates is less of a gamble than starting to build in various factors and that. So are we all there?
Yeah.
In that concept? Okay.
Follow up. So I think we'll bring a status quo scenario, just keep doing what we've been doing. We'll probably bring a shift to more conservation or ability to control costs, kind of the winter averaging and the pull the 4 units out. We've done a lot of work on that already. We'll bring those two scenarios. Is there anything else?
I want us to make sure that we keep us out of jail too.
I think we assumed that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Why? Hey,
Scenarios.
Mark, why do you care? You're going to send me.
Well, I'm being very serious here because I've been in a situation in another city as a director of public works where the city council voted to do value engineering. And then when the line broke because they went with the cheaper plastic, I'm being very serious here, and it was on a wastewater line, And then they came back madder than all blazes at me for it. I was like, you guys are the ones that went with the value engineering and put in cheap plastic.
And let me reframe my earlier comment on that. One, when we're doing our rate modeling, we're going to assume the 8% for the sewer project. So while we're in our call it design phase by value engineering, we believe we could actually there's a diversion basically just west of 238th that goes to the 238th lift. We believe we can get more out of that than what it's currently designed for. So if redesigning that portion buys us more time and we're actually better utilizing the current system, that's what I'm meaning by value engineering, not necessarily changing out concrete for plastics and cheaper
Yeah,
pumps.
see, this is
and
why I
that
was
kind of
going to
thing.
come talk to you guys.
No.
Take John's suggestion and come back later and visit with you guys, see what do you mean by value engineering?
No, it's just
Well,
one.
Yeah,
Mark,
which I'm willing to do.
I appreciate that. That always goes here when we're having these complicated
Yeah.
and new kinds of topics that we don't make I don't make a living going through this stuff. We hire people
Right.
that do it. So give it.
We're going to assume the 8% figure in this thing's built in 26.
Right.
And if through our preliminary design work and efforts, it's like, oh, it doesn't need to be 26, it could be 30. Then it's less, but we're going to go in assuming we're changing this out at 8%.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah,
The confusion early on.
yeah.
all right, if there's no more questions here
Yeah.
and you can follow up with Seth and if our consultant will be happy to follow up too. So just direct your calls though to Greg or Seth. So I'm going to send my appreciation
Yeah.
for
That's
this
awesome.
information.
Lots of information.
This
Yeah.
confused you?
Well, I got a few threads that I think I'm connecting the dots, but thank you for the work, Seth. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody need a quick break? I'm gonna move on.
If you do, Mayor.
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
Okay. We thought maybe you
All
did.
right. All right, John, our next item on the agenda is a pavement preservation bid award. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. Page we on? There we go. Page 58.
Share screen, don't
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Patting myself on the back here. Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors.
Good evening.
And to you, the annual pavement preservation bid award, resolution 19-2023. I will be presenting also a staff recommendation and asking for council action at the end. A little history background. This will come out of the street fund. We currently have adopted appropriations of $150,000 for the annual investment. We did post an RFP in the Business Tribune. We did get one result out of that. It was CR Contracting in the amount of just over $129,000. CR Contracting, they've actually been the bid award since 2019. So very familiar with our system, with our streets. They've been a good contractor to work with. What we're going to requesting is some patchwork, asphalt patchwork, some crack sealing and slurry seal. Our current pavement condition index throughout our entire system is a 75. Again, that's it's a rating, it's an engineered rating out of 100 for your pavement. This is the projects here. We're looking at Shannon Street, Shannon Court, 231st Court, and Northeast 237th. Really, this will, if we complete this year and you approve this resolution, this will pretty much complete basically the whole lower city. I think there'll be a couple, Shea Lane, 240th and 230th Court, I think will be the remaining in the lower system. Other than that, should all be taken care of there. This just shows that, you know, with our pavement condition rating of 75, that we are doing what's engineers have prescribed as a treatment. So we're doing, again, the patchwork, the crack sealing, and then the slurry seal. There are alternatives to this. Take no action. And again, just put a void in this year's pavement preservation. And again, the pavement condition index will go down if you don't stay up on your treatments. We could award to CR Contracting, or we could rebid January, winter of 2024 and hope we get good weather prior to June 30th of 2024. So there are alternatives here. It is staff recommendation to award the pavement preservation contract to CR Contracting. This supports goal 3, high quality, cost effective public utilities, parks and events. I will answer any questions.
Good. Questions from council?
I just love it.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 19-2023, authorizing city manager to award the fiscal year 2023-24 pavement preservation project to CR Contracting not to exceed 150,000.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And John, I don't know if you said it, but our pavement
Love it.
index
Index
is a good index. It's above. It's
I
way-
know.
75.
I was waiting for you to say that.
Oh, I know. I just look at all of these other cities and I'm driving around and I just go, oh my goodness, are we just so fortunate here in Wood Village?
Yeah, and so I can add a little more to our pavement preservation. I know Greg's like, come on, get out of here. This will be the final year that we actually pay off the Cedar Lane project. So that project, it was a 2018, 2019 project that ran over, and the street fund has been making that repayment. So I'm looking forward to 2024's 25's investment to allocations to go a little higher.
Having your bill paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next item is does not require action. This tonight, but Greg is here to show us what we are going to take action on probably the next meeting.
Or at least consider.
Yeah.
So correct, no action needed tonight. We just want to go over discussion on some municipal code updates. We started this kind of winter time into the spring, then we added on to it. So for quick background, I'm going a little quick because I know we're running low on time, but again, stop me at any time. We've been attempting to do a comprehensive municipal code update for a couple of years now. I understand why it hadn't been done. It's very complex, very time consuming. And in that process, there's been a few things that are of community substance. These aren't necessarily housekeeping, changing titles, making sure it's consistent. They actually can construction noise and now chickens. We've already taken action on a solid waste update and some industrial pre-treatment because we had to. So that's been cleaned up and done. So with truck parking and noise, we brought this to you several months ago now, did a lot of newsletter articles and things and been getting feedback since February. And when we talked with you a few months back, it was like, you know what, let's keep commercial parking the way it is, no change, status quo. So it's basically a vehicle on standby or emergency, like typically it's a tow truck. Large commercial vehicles can't be parked in residential areas. For noise, again, our code was a little wonky on weekend construction noise, and based on your feedback and feedback from the community, it was, let's make it clear that between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. for non-commercial exterior construction, that's okay. And that seemed to be what the community felt. Some wanted, no work should be done on weekends at all. This seemed to be a nice compromise. Through that process, we actually had a couple people say, why can't we have chickens in our area? So currently, chickens are only allowed in the LR 7.5 zone, most often known as the original village. That's the simplistic way to put it. The current code, you can have up to 3 chickens, has to have a coop and a run. There are some sizing requirements for minimums for that coop and run. And certainly there's some good setbacks. So this particular community member lives in the LR 12 zone, or otherwise known as Upper Village, and said, why can't we have chickens? And he said, well, since we're asking about some other stuff, let's ask this question. So we did. And we got 10 responses back, so not certainly representative of the entire community. And we also learned some things, though. One, the way I wrote some of the, the website piece and the article, people were confused about that we already allow it in some areas and what those conditions were. I didn't get in the details of those conditions, more figuring, do you just want to expand where it's already allowed? Didn't think people would want to know the details. They did, and that was my error. And with that, most seemed open to allowing it if there were adequate space. We published the comments as part of the report. You saw some, and we didn't know their address. We don't know, are they in like in a duplex, an apartment, manufactured home, Upper Village? But there were concerns about space, making sure things were clean, appropriate coop. A few people wanted more than 3. Troutdale allows 6. 3 is not uncommon. And so based on the feedback, the recommendation is to allow chickens in the LR 12 zone as a start to expand it. So that wouldn't include kind of the multifamily zones, that there could be duplexes or some other homes that could have this space, but some may not have that space based on the current setbacks, and trying to keep things away from neighbors who may not appreciate backyard farming, for example. So what we're hoping to do at the next meeting is bring back those 3 revisions, well, actually 2 revisions. One, the status quo, so it's not a revision, but codifying the construction noise and expanding where chickens would be allowed. And so now just asking, is that what you would like to see at your next meeting?
In your packet, you probably saw it, but I'll just call your attention to it. There's that chart that Greg prepared and made the identified, kind of summarized some of the comments that came in. Questions or clarification? No roosters.
Allow them now.
That's right. I don't think there is any of the cities that are allowing roosters, but okay. Now, if there's no questions, we will see this again for action. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Director of Public Works.
We have one more.
Oh, we do.
Holiday.
But you want to go down to which other one do you have?
The holiday.
Oh, yeah, the holiday. This is
This is an important one.
it is more than one. We're going to ban any holidays.
I vote no on holiday.
Again, what we're looking for decision for you tonight isn't necessarily how we're gonna, well, it's how we're gonna run the event, but not the details. And so a little bit of quick background. Start of 2020, we started a turkey drive program, kind of with COVID and the need, and there wasn't a lot of food organizations in our area. That's how that got started. And the program at the time provided a main, an entree, and then an assortment of sides. The following year, we expanded that to try to have different, be culturally representative. So there's a couple of options for your sides. That turned into a lot of staff work, both trying to acquire the items, put them all together, track who wanted what. So last year, the idea was, well, let's partner with the East County Food Pantry. That also started around 2020, was also doing a turkey kind of Thanksgiving program. So we decided to partner with them. So we went from serving 150 families to 300 with our support. From the recap we had about that back in December time, I'll call it lessons learned. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't imperfect either. But so we then operated the winter holiday one in-house and we changed it instead of, again, providing sides. It was a main, which was a ham, and then a gift card. So they could go purchase whatever they wanted with it. And we did the 150 families. So real brief history on the programs. And there are kind of three concepts we're asking you to give us direction on to put something together. One, doing both in-house, however that may look. So there's still, whether we do gift cards, actually buying that number of gift cards takes a fair amount of coordination with the store. They think it's fraud. So there's a bit of staff time still, even if we're not doing full size. And there's, the signups, follow-ups, day of. We can continue to try to partner with an organization, whether it's the East County Food Pantry, maybe a different organization that handles some food donation options. I think if we do that, we'd want to work with them to set some clear expectations. We didn't know what we didn't know last year, and I think we'd want to clarify because our name's part of it. We need to guarantee some guest services, reminders, some day of logistics, that kind of thing. I think we'd want to set those terms ahead of time and be supportive in it. So it still requires staff time, but not necessarily as much as in-house. And then there's the third option, which is an option. I'm not saying we're recommending it. We basically take the funds that we had for the event, give them to a qualified food donation, say go forth and make sure there's food for the holidays. And we kind of wash our hands of all of it. I'm not saying I'm recommending it. It is an option. So of those three, where do you seem to be leaning? So we can put together then a package to bring back to say, here's, based on your feedback of these concepts, here's what we were planning on doing.
Greg, let me add just a little bit because we've had a conversation. Because I asked this question over the last 3 years, we've added three. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've added 3 events to what the city has been doing. That takes us up to 8 per year. So in the context of this discussion, and that doesn't include, by the way, any kind of, if somebody has a grant in the park, because we give grants for people to use the park if they're, I forgot what we.
Community event.
Community events.
Yeah. There's still some staff support or involvement.
Yeah, it still is here and there's still some staff work that goes into that. I say, and I'm just going to make this as a general statement. I think we all like events and we all like having the community involved and we want to do that. And it's important that we do that based on our vision. We also have to balance it. And that's where I'm at right now, balancing the outreach we've been doing with what is our primary function as a city. And that is to provide public safety. We just had a long infrastructure conversation. So provide sewer, water, recreation as in parks. So, and streets. So in my mind, there's a time to balance. We don't have to necessarily stop, but how we're doing some of these, I think is worth a conversation. And we've had a previous conversation, I believe it was last year or the year before, about this. We've also expanded who we allocated is at 0.5. We added FTE. And part of that FTE, it wasn't, it's not, we didn't, the council didn't assign that FTE to anything, but we know where that FTE is being used for to some extent, and it's to manage some of these events. So I bring that up because we did some things and we expanded partly due to COVID. And certainly some of the downsizing and when we had to rely on ARPA funds and we did some of our support for utility bills. So within that context, Greg is asking us and what we need to give him some direction to. Are there ways within these 3 recommendations? Do you have any thoughts tonight that would help start to move us forward, not for a decision tonight, but move us forward in a direction?
I have a question. Does the partner that the East County Pantry, do they do something for around the Christmas holiday?
I don't believe, they did not last
They didn't
year.
do last year. And
Nothing special. They still run their Saturday
Yeah.
program.
when they did the turkey meal, do we know how many Wood Village residents kind of were served?
I
during that
believe it
time?
was about 47, which was a little less. I think the year before we were 70 to 90, somewhere in that range of Wood Village out of the 150. So it was a little less, but not
The whole.
out of the realm. And we still promoted it and advertised it in our same media channels. There was some early confusion. For signups, you needed a Google account
Mhm.
for the way that they registered people. And we had them fix that, quickly, but a few weeks went by before that was realized for that barrier.
And how many Wood Village residents did we serve during the holiday meal one during?
Oh, that
The winter
number
one.
escapes me. Generally,
It
it
was
was
a little higher.
about half-ish out of the 150. About half is directly Wood Village. About then the other 2/3 of the remaining half, kind of Fairview, Troutdale, and then the last little bit is this kind of that greater Gresham area typically.
And I guess my kind of a concept also just, because I get what you're saying, Mayor, is we have to have that balance and not overextend staff time to doing more. What if this year we really focus more in just the Wood Village residents? And so if that means decreasing some of those meals, maybe some of that coordination is decreased as well.
Staff have a recommendation for this?
Not necessarily. It does take to run it all in-house with full sides takes a lot.
Yeah.
If it's just kind of a main and a gift card, that's a bit less. There's still no guarantee, short of saying it's Wood Village only. There's no guarantee that we would get any more Wood Village people than we wouldn't otherwise. I think that just maybe, I know in the past, working with the natural leaders, for an example, these events have been meaningful to them. It's a nice way to get engaged and feel good. That might be useful in doing the outreach for the event. Let's just say, for example, we partner with the East County Food Pantry and set a framework around some expectations, and they're okay with that. Then we can go to some of our grassroots organizations and community people and say, hey, here's this program, here's how to sign up, help us spread the word to those in Wood Village since we're supporting it. That might be a better use of staff time in encouraging and promoting kind of the program through networks than trying to procure a bunch of different items and doing necessarily,
Yeah.
reminder emails and things.
That sounds the best to me, first, my opinion.
What's been more successful with the different types of things that we've done in the past? As far as what's beneficial, successful rate, as far as what's beneficial for the community in Wood Village?
Again, only a few years of history, but the very first year when it was a set box of stuff, some people didn't know what to do with some of that stuff or wasn't meaningful to them. And then when we kind of offered option A or B, it was, well, I want to mix and match some of A and some of B. Oh, and I want something in box C that doesn't exist. It created like an expectation of like a grocery list almost, which is why we just pivoted to a gift card. Go buy what is going to be meaningful to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That works.
So I work with some people that don't have everything in their kitchen. Some people don't even have kitchens. Okay. And I work directly with them. And so then I ask questions about how do they get around now? And, they don't even have bus transportation anymore because these programs are being cut. All right. So then you're trying to go, wow. So they did have it. And now there's no COVID money anymore for them to even do that. So I'm trying to figure out how can I get help for them to maintain them. It's very, very difficult. And, they want to get jobs and things like that. So I'm working with them on those type of things too. And stability is the key word in every aspect of this. So even if they got a turkey, they wouldn't be able to cook it. So this is just, it's getting unbearable. I'm sorry to bring that up like that, but this is what's hit me over the last week,
Oh, yeah.
just so you know.
Yeah.
So then you wonder, do we provide them with a place to just even go eat? So,
Let me, here's a
Sorry.
thought. Well, no, I mean, we need to have this discussion and I knew it was going to take a little bit of time. But the food pantry, that's a newly established food pantry, 2 years now.
Three, I believe it was
About 3 years,
2020 that really started to
Yeah.
get going.
I've been thinking about this and last year we worked with them and it became a little more work than what staff anticipated. An idea is for this food pantry and it's at Smith Memorial Church. And I met with well, at our appreciation dinner, sitting at the table with us was the person that is now managing that. So we've had this conversation a little, how's it going and all that. I would like to see the food pantry take over one of these events. And it maybe it's the turkey. I like our
Thanksgiving, you mean?
Thanksgiving, yeah. And we give them the money that we would normally spend. So we give them a check, 5,000, I think, which that's
Six, but yeah.
6,000. And not just because I do think we need to reduce the time that is encroached on staff. This is like event creep. If you know what price creep is, we've continued to creep into staff time. I think in my mind, if we could do this, give them the money, help them to some degree this year, but then turn it over to them. And and it's not just for us. What I think it is the community needs to know a consistent place to get food. And if they have this consistent event, they had it last year, they have it again, they got a little more experience in it, they got the money, they know they're going to get the money ahead of time. They can consult and talk about with staff here how they could do it. I don't think it's our job to train the food pantry how to do this. I mean, the person was hired and they know how to do this. And we create a stable and consistent place where food is available, not just on holidays, but throughout the year. And our community gets to know that, and we can help them with one of these events and help them by paying for it and help them to, if we have to, consult some with that. So I believe there's pluses here for our community beyond us doing it. And I think it's more supportive of our community, not less, if we can help this food pantry be sustainable.
May I ask a question? Are we allowed to do that, though?
To donate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've done it before.
A city is allowed to donate?
We would use these funds anyway.
We've done it plenty of times.
I'm asking that more for Jeff.
Yeah, no, you have to articulate a public purpose relating to the city. But if you're donating the food to the food ground, that they're going to be food over the holidays to Wood Village residents, that qualifies.
Okay,
You can't just give them the money.
all right. So, yeah, so it's a grant.
Yeah, it's a grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But again, I do like what Greg, you mentioned before is, and kind of what the mayor is saying is maybe we do tell Smith Memorial here's our support, but here's our guidelines and expectations. And then maybe, yeah, connect them with that group that can help facilitate the outreach into our community that, again, we want to make sure, obviously, we have to kind of make sure that they are being served in this effort as well.
That's what I was gonna piggyback on that. Like, I like what the mayor was saying, but we do have to set the expectations and also let, the food bank and our community know that, hey, this comes from our city. And whether that we're being proactive and communicating that to our community, we just don't want to be disconnected. And if we want to go back to being inclusive with our community, that kind of strips it away if we're just, handing a paycheck. And we have to remember we're still a small city and we want to feel like a small city, and it will be inclusive in that aspect. So.
And I think, again, they run a Saturday program every Saturday. I think they run that very, very well. Trying to serve 300 people in a short time frame. I think there were some learning lessons, I'll call it. And when we started our food programs in 2020, it was in its infancy entirely. Now it is a different organization and entity. I think there are opportunities to grow that program, let our community members know that program exists, and still provide then, whether it's grassroots opportunities to be involved or for elected staff to volunteer during, certain days or activities to keep that community connection going. I think we can achieve that. Well, it's possible to achieve that.
And Greg, I think we all want to, it's however, it is obvious that Wood Village is sponsoring this or co-sponsoring it if somebody else
Supporting or
supporting it. And we put it in our newsletters just like we would
any other event. Now, is that just for the Thanksgiving one? Do you want to try that for a winter one as well? Or at least enter into the conversation with them, since we want to talk about Thanksgiving. We want to kind of breach the topic of holidays or run holidays like we did last year.
I mean, I think with the conversation, at least in my point, with the conversation is going, it'd be wise to start having that conversation with them as well.
Kind of transitioning it
Kind
to
of
the food
transition.
pantry.
And again, with those guidelines,
Keeping
those
the connection.
expectations, and because I think what we're mentioning here is one, highlighting them as a resource within our community that our own community members, residents can go and get some resources from, but also understanding that it's a partnership, a sponsored thing by the city of Wood Village. So I think
Just as a kind of a follow-up, we're having those conversations, wanted to take kind of a test of council. Is this, because we've changed since we started this event, it has changed every year we've done it. And in terms of doing, if we want to partner with an organization like that, if it's a series of one-off events, that's different than if you were to make a commitment to look at doing something like a 3 to 5 year commitment, so that then they could realize this is part of our annual program. We need to start advertising this rather than, and build some consistency and capacity within their organization that might be helpful to really get the program out there and for them to, it'd be part of the DNA of their organization rather than a series.
I think that's what we are saying, is to help support and build the capacity of another agency in this community to deliver on some of the needs that this community have, that we have been filling, and give them the support they need.
And that could also lend to on them also to say, okay, other cities or county, we have this established with the city of Wood Village,
What are you gonna do?
what are you doing, or what can you do so we can expand this? And so again, it's really growing them with some like seed money, basically, the first thing is.
And
So-
pointing the community towards that
Yes.
resource too.
And I just want to address Councilor Clark's concern. I have a traditional kitchen or that may not have transportation. So I know there are delivery options. Or the food pantry did it. We partnered with Uber Eats. And as part of our kind of considerations, we'll make sure that there are options for those that may not have a traditional kitchen or places to cook full raw turkeys, that there are some meaningful items for those people as well. I want to make sure that we can serve everyone where they're at.
We all good? All right, Greg.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Down here with my little pen. Public Works report, John.
Sorry, just really fast. So we have a hard stop at 8:30 still.
We will, and I think sooner than 8:30.
Okay, great.
All right.
Sorry, I just have a little guy with.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
We'll,
We're good.
all right.
So
No rush.
I got people waiting for me too.
Okay, well, let's move it along here.
Evening, Mayor, City Councilors. I'm here to present the Public Works report. You did not receive a report in June, so this will kind of wrap up May and moving forward. in your packet, you should have received the Metro Fatality Report as requested by the mayor and councils. One of the highlights for our city staff, I wanted to give them a shout out with the water valves cans on Gleason Street. I thought we were going to have to contract that out. As you know, Gresham and Multnomah County were doing a paving project, and part of that project was, you adjust your water valves and all the monuments, and our staff did all those. So I was really happy that our staff could do that. Again, I thought we were going to have to contract that out, but they completed that.
Well, nice job.
And as you've driven Gleason, you can see that paving project is complete. So a shout out to the county and
That is
Gresham for
really much
yeah.
nicer out there.
You can tell.
I'm still dodging the potholes though, just by habit.
Muscle memory. Muscle memory.
My car recognizes them.
to touch on
Easy.
was there was a fire in Donald Robertson Park near the Cottonwood property line. There was about 600 to 900 square feet of property that was damaged. No report from Gresham Fire, but it was caused by a discarded cigarette. So there were no injuries, and we did get a contractor arborist in there to assess the area. One tree had to be removed, and that has been removed. So our staff did do some erosion control measures, just make sure all the fires are out, kind of did some cleanup there. So, but I did want to report that. No official fire report that I'm aware of, but there was a Gresham Fire response. So, and from staffing update, Erica, which is sitting behind me, passed her wastewater collections 2 certification. What does that mean?
Yes.
Yay.
Similar to water, you're required to have a responsible person. Erica is now named our responsible person for our wastewater system.
Lucky.
About time we got somebody responsible there.
Totally.
Erica can tell there's nobody up front here. No.
As far as development updates on that, Chipotle's going up. I don't know if you've driven by, they've had painters out there and it's moving along. So we think the handoff is going to be from Chipotle, from Sire, which is doing all the general stuff, and the Shell. We think about Labor Day.
Labor Day weekend is the handoff with opening, call it November-ish, plus or minus.
Yeah.
Great.
And
So-
then Chick-fil-A's delayed, but still moving forward.
So everybody's, and Sandy is asking me about our Sonic. There's some buzz that we're getting Sonic.
I am not aware of that.
We are?
Yeah.
I'd be super pumped about that.
And I mean, these are,
Hot dogs for days.
I hope not.
you hope not?
I hope not, yeah.
No.
No one
Aware
aware
of a
of
Sonic.
Sonic
I'm
or
only
the
aware- okay.
representatives have contacted our office.
And
Yeah.
they were telling me I should know. And I'm like, sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Woodburn.
Any other, John, anything else?
Lastly, the water loss was 11.9%, but I could say Becky and Erica have diligently been working with our SCADA and working on
Darn
calibrating meters, that this next report, it'll be below 10%.
Great.
Yay.
On diving in. And that's really, once we hit November and our SCADA system our new SCADA system, new improved, is up and running, I think we're going to have a better assessment of not just our water, but our wastewater also. So I know that I did want to chime in with when Seth was giving his presentation with the SDCs and rates, and Greg was talking about the maybe another option. Also too, we're evaluating the flows. Are they accurate?
Yeah.
Our past SCADA provider, Becky had to really dive into, dive into dissecting where were these figures coming from. So
Yeah.
she's done a great job on that. So is Erica, and diving in and really getting an accurate account for.
Especially that partial flume out there. So
Absolutely. So
I'd also just want to point out that we haven't really highlighted this comprehensively, but it wasn't just the master plan or utility rates. We've been looking at our entire utility in terms of engineering, in terms of capital investment, in terms of how it's operated and we use it, and in terms of finance. And that's all. We've had discrete pieces, but the reality is we've done a deep dive on pretty much every aspect of our water and sewer system over the last 2 years, and that's continuing and we'll end up wrapping up. And so it's really been everyone in the organization all kind of rowing the boat in the same direction and covering it in a very comprehensive manner.
Good. Anything
And-
else?
And lastly, the splash pad's being used.
You darn right it is.
What?
Yeah.
199 times. So
Okay, yeah. That's one of those things we kind of like to spend money on.
Yeah, watch those kids out
Next,
there.
thank you.
Thank you.
Greg,
Isn't it finance director
we
report?
got no finance.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Finance is anybody can do that.
In the interest of time, we have our scholarship applications. The deadline was end of June. We have, I believe, 6. The mayor would be part of that review panel. I need one more counselor as part of that review panel with the mayor and myself to hopefully read all those through and talk about awards yet this week. So who would like to review 6?
And that's open. It doesn't take a long time, but this is nice. We got 6 applications. So
You said the end of the.
I can review.
you liked it? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we get a copy
Yay.
and those.
And then what I'll do is I'll send an email tomorrow to you two to pick a date this week.
Yes.
to talk about
Okay. Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Way to go.
Are we supposed to fill this
Yeah.
out? Are you getting to this?
it. Next thing. Just over about 2. That's just what we're planning for the city booth. Ideally, you would like to be there as part of that, and that's where the little pamphlet talks about the activities we're planning, which generally is serve someone candy, some other stuff to hand out. The activity then is we have 11 info boards, 11 in English, 9 translated into Spanish. They'll be posted around that people learn about what we do. You'll have trivia cards. You'll ask people a trivia question that's based off one of the boards. They get it right. They spin the wheel. They get some balls to throw at me. That's the activity. So go ahead, if you want to contact Caroline directly to sign up for a space, or you're like, yeah, I'm going to be there. Great. That's all we need at this time. And then also for counselors Amen and Clark, we still needed quotes. So we actually crafted them for you. And if you on that,
Wait, I'm sorry, did I quotes for what?
the info board, we have one for city council.
Dang.
Then we wanted quotes from all of you. And so we figured very busy, a lot going on. So we created based on either newsletter articles or newspaper articles, crafted a quote. And
That
if you're,
looks like AI, yeah.
if
Yes,
This thing,
This is the best thing I've ever written, honestly, so. Check.
reading this going, I must be doing something wrong.
so I think Councilor Clark, I think you had 2 options if you want one or the other or none.
The first word, realizing. I'm teasing. No,
All right.
So I have to pick between the 2?
Was it
You
you
got
that had
2?
2?
I have 2.
I
wow.
remember who had 2.
I'm gonna go with the shorter one.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we,
You two down here.
Yeah, I'm-
Let me make a decision.
You two that need to leave, that want to leave. You're
Yeah.
blowing us down here.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. You're right.
we will send an email for the parade things, the staging, the timeframe for that day, but then also day of at the event. Be great to have you at the booth, engaging with folks to throw balls at me.
And Greg, you said just notify Caroline.
Yes.
Okay.
And then lastly, in amongst our effort to brand and promote ourselves, we're creating stickers because people like to put them on water bottles, Thule travel vessels, Subarus. We created, there are 4 designs. 2 are very much Wood Village and, they match our brand, our theme and all of that. One's kind of a play on something that I'm not going to go the backstory, but it's great. The 4th one is very much Northwest. It's very much Oregon. I want to double check that you're okay with Wood Village. It's a little bit out there, which is why I'm going to show it to you just to make sure that you're okay with
I was
it.
wondering if you're going to pick that one. I saw that. Oh, I love it. Cute.
It's one of those things that people either like, that's going to sell or not sell, go like hotcakes because it's weird, it's quirky, it's Oregon, or it's like, why is this Wood Village? I'm
I got
not hip.
socks to match.
I'm on record of not being hip. Thank you. So I just wanted to.
Hip? He's not hip.
I second.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with us having this as a sticker option, we will have it as part of our series.
Oh, golly, that's awesome.
I figured
Really
that would be the thing. People would like, that's
Yeah.
cool. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm okay.
Pat Smith will love that.
Well, I chase the apes around here.
So unless there are other questions, I'll consider that my report done in interest of time.
Of course, your dad would say the other word for that though.
Yeah,
Question, when are we getting our shirts?
That's a good question. I will follow up on that.
Yeah, like
That's-
what are you wearing, what are you all wearing to the city night out? Like our vests or just the name tags or what?
the vests sometimes are good to wear, so you
Yeah.
identify it as a counselor.
It can also be a little warm, so I understand if, you get warm.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, it must,
What's that?
You don't have the-
must be.
Yeah.
It's the three seashells that you're worried about. If you know that movie.
I'll up and send an email on the status of the order.
You got a lot to do, so,
Thank you.
Hey, let's see, I want to make sure the attorney over here doesn't have something that keep us out of trouble.
25-minute report.
I could drone on for hours.
Oh, please do.
I don't, the only thing I've noted is the legislature finally died, and we're in the process as we do every come to us.
Yeah.
So I may actually have it actually
Okay,
All right.
all right.
having a law clerk.
Well, that's what I'm hearing too from the mayors associations. Nobody really knows what's been done to us yet.
Well, everything happened in the last week.
Oh, yeah.
And this is not settled here, so.
Yeah, Greg and I went through that with Senator Gorsuch, chief of staff here the other morning, and
And we're trying to get Rep. Hudson here in September.
okay,
We're not having a second meeting in July, are we?
We're having a second meeting in July. We're not having any meetings in August.
August is off. All right, so we got the reminders, you got your notes there, and we got to get our booth assignments into Caroline. If there's not anything else, we'll adjourn.